Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall, and a word about today's show. I'm talking with Jon Lane of O.H.S.O Brewing in Arizona and Russ Klisch of the Lakefront Brewery in Wisconsin about a beer initiative around the 988 National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This episode will specifically be talking about self-harm experiences and prevention. If you're having thoughts of suicide, call or text 988 to reach the lifeline. Additionally, in the United States, you can visit speakingofsuicide.com/resources for a list of services. Individual countries also have their own resources. It's okay to not be okay, and you're not alone. We'll get into this conversation in a moment, but first, a reminder to please go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can find original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. You can listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer, the All About Beer podcast, and Beer Travelers simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to show. This show and all of the work we do, it's supported by you. Please go visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer. A few bucks goes a long way to help keep the content fresh and to fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising on this show or any of our shows, please email info@allaboutbeer.com. A few weeks ago, Lakefront Brewery in Milwaukee sent out a note that it would be joining a group of breweries by releasing a beer inspired by O.H.S.O Brewing in Phoenix to raise awareness about 988, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. O.H.S.O owner Jon Lane himself has lost family and friends to suicide, and as you'll hear, he even had ideations himself. He credits the volunteer he spoke with after dialing 988 for saving his life. Not everyone knows about the number and the service, and Lane wanted to raise awareness and to shine a light on the importance of mental health and saving lives. The 988 Beer Initiative helps break down barriers and bring suicide prevention to the forefront of conversations. Lakefront released its beer, A Weiss, earlier in September. Russ Klisch is a longtime friend. He's the president of Lakefront Brewery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he joined the call to talk about his brewery's involvement in the program. And after we recorded this episode, Klisch sent me an email saying the following: Jon from O.H.S.O is a hero and a leader in the brewing industry for reaching out, telling his story, and getting others to be aware of 988. It was an honor to be on the podcast with him. I remember Harry Truman once saying something like, a leader is someone who gets someone to do something they don't want to do, but should be doing it. We should all be talking about suicide prevention, but there's still a taboo about it. So Klisch continued, thanks to people like Jon, these barriers are being broken down, and we're all talking about it. I couldn't agree more. Here's our conversation. Jon, I wanted to start with you because throughout the summer, the national news headlines coming out of Arizona seemed fairly alarming with the temperatures that you all were going through. One, I guess, what was it like on the ground? And two, did that prolonged heat wave have any significant impacts on the business?
Yeah, I mean, this was one of our worst summers. I have to say, I do get out of Arizona quite a bit. We have a family home on Lake Michigan. I'm just on the other side of Lake Michigan. So I tend to spend at least a good 3 weeks there during July, trying to get out of the heat. But yes, it was one of our worst summers, I would say, across the board for most of us in the restaurant and brewing business.
Do you see long-term impacts to these types of summers? Does it start to change the way that you're thinking about brewing or thinking about the businesses?
I don't know that it changes the way I think about brewing necessarily, but it definitely changes the way that I view our properties and our gathering spaces. I want to make them more sustainable and also, a higher quality visit when it's 112 out, 115, 110. Anything over 100's pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah. Russ, how you guys haven't had the same quite temperature swings in Wisconsin, but what's the overall state of beer in the city as you see it these days?
The state of beer is good. You still have some places opening. Everybody's plugging away still with new different styles and types of beers they're coming away with. So it's still a vibrant operation that you have here in town. So we're excited to be part of it. And we've done some, interesting things ourselves with improving our Riverwalk this summer and with going to all cans this spring. So that was the big things for us.
I feel I'm gonna miss Lakefront in 12-ounce bottles. There's something that was always kind of, I don't know. The beer just always tasted right coming out of bottles. And um, did the world just eclipse it?
Yeah, it's hard to be. We only can do one. We can't do both. We can't do both bottles and cans because we're a small space here. So we had to choose one. And right now, it's basically gotten to the point where if you come out with a new product in a bottle, they don't take it as seriously as just with cans right now in the marketplace.
You mentioned Riverwalk, and there's uh I often think of your brewery in a very positive way, with classic styles, with traditional uh beer going back to the early days of beer, and being executed quite well. But then I've also been surprised and delighted by a lot of the other beers that you've done, some of the hazies and gluten free, and you guys have messed around with a bunch of ingredients. What's resonating for Lakefront these days? Because I imagine it's a balance, right? There's people who see you all in a certain way and don't see you as a producer of hazy, or vice versa. So what's leading those conversations for you
Yeah,
these
for us,
days?
I always look at it as if you can drink two beers and you want a third, it's a good beer. And and so when we have our beers, we come out whether it's a hazy or an amber lager or whatever, it's a very drinkable beer. And I think a lot of people around here look at that characteristic from us, is that when they know that they drink it, it's a very drinkable, flavorful product.
John, what's running the conversation beer wise for you all these days?
I would say the trend is definitely back to the lager game. You can any variation thereabout, but obviously IPAs are still selling heavily, but it just kind of depends. Each store I have different leaders. The neighborhood kind of dictates that. We definitely have, the same, I'll call it top three leaders across the stores, but each store seems to kind of just vary a tiny bit. I think that's due to the neighborhoods around it, whether it, I don't know if it's an age or something else that's dictating it, but it definitely is different.
Um, have you seen? So I'm always sort of amazed when I go to Miami or Tampa, or some of the more hot climates, and see people drinking big imperial stouts. And as you were talking about the temperatures above 100 degrees, th does that translate in Arizona? Are people? I know lagers are the refreshment that people are looking for, but is there any market in Arizona for those big boozy imperial stouts in the hotter months, like Florida sees?
So we don't sell as well in the hotter months. We do have a barrel age program with us, and there's several breweries that have big barrel aged beers, but they don't sell at the volume. And I mean, I don't know about Miami, but Tampa, based on Cigar City and a lot of the people spawning from there, you do see them everywhere. And I'm surprised when I walk in and see a 15% big boozy beer on when it's 85 degrees out with 90% humidity. But yeah, I mean, we don't sell them. We sell them all year, but it truly, I would say it's a seasonal. It's a 6 month, and what I'll call winter, which you guys would often call summer in Wisconsin, um, is kind of our season for those.
Russ, are there? I know you all are a big lager drinking town, but are seasonals still moving the way that they used to for you all? remember, a good pumpkin lager that you guys made a couple of years ago that I actually enjoyed. And
Yeah, we have the pumpkin out still. That's still one of our top sellers. Our Oktoberfest is very good seller also. We also have an barrel aged pumpkin. We had a nitro pumpkin this year that we came out with, which we didn't make that much, but the people that had it really enjoyed it. We also have our My Turn series that we do here. We let an employee brew their own style of beer. We have the or My Turn John Huber beer out right now, which is a dark lager with cherries added. So that's a favorite of ours. And we also got Brewer Reserve barrel aged beers that we have here at the brewery that you can only get.
I know we've covered this on All About Beer quite a bit in the past. But how are the exports to Ukraine doing these days for the brewery?
They're steady. We don't sell a ton of beer there, but we have an order at least 2 to 3 times a year that go to Ukraine. Usually it's about 10 skids of product that go over. And we also have the Putin is a dick crawler that we sell here, where we charge $5 more, and we donate $5, and we've sold 15,000 of them so far.
Incredible.
So that's a big thing. It's $150,000 we've donated to Ukraine through this effort.
That's great. I'm it's really wonderful that you all are doing that, but still continuing to do it. That's a cool thing. So speaking of important beers and speaking of important things, so the reason you're both on this show is Lakefront sent out a news release a couple weeks ago, or about a week or so ago, about the Save a Weiss, which you all are calling a suicide prevention brew. And in this release from Lakefront, Jon, they're crediting you and your brewery with getting this going. And I wonder if you can share some background as to how some of this came together on your end.
Sure. The 988 brew came from a random discussion with a fellow bar owner who was struggling and didn't really want to share. Sorry, give me a second. And through the conversation, this came about. We decided to do it as kind of an awareness beer. We did it that year. We just did it in-house, and we also shipped a few kegs to his location. As you move forward, we decided to get other bars and restaurants involved, and other breweries, a couple of coffee shops, and then we kind of had the ball rolling. We were up to about 200 breweries, but mostly they were sort of Southwest, and then COVID hit. So we weren't able to really function that process during that time period, because reaching out or making those connections was a little bit harder. We did do it each year, and we had a few people participate, but it wasn't quite as easy at that point. Post-COVID, we started back up, full energy, trying to get people from all over the U.S. It's an awareness beer, to let people know that the number is a non-judgmental, viable human that can guide you with either a lesson to help someone, or if you're the one in crisis, you can get assistance as well.
Yeah. And that was launched in July of 2020, the 988 number, which long overdue, but especially given COVID and I think a lot of the struggles that folks were going through, certainly timely. Mental health is and talking about well-being is one of those really critical things in and around the beer space. I mean, for everybody, but since this is a beer specific show, talking about in and around the beer space, and it's something that I think was swept or swept away or spoken about quietly for a long time. Was there resistance by some folks when you started talking about this initiative, when you started talking about this beer, or was it fully embraced? Yeah.
Sorry, our first couple of years, we definitely had resistance. We had people. It was 1-800-273-TALK. That was the long number for what 988 is now, and we had people. Alcohol and suicide don't mix, and obviously, alcohol is a leading portion of where suicide kind of ends. I'll say, or kind of starts for some people, but it's what I do. And it's what I knew my friends do. And I wanted to make sure that we could spread awareness. And it was the only way I could get it out there, and allow others to make their judgment. And we still occasionally get a, doesn't mix email or text or a DM or a, private message, whatever you want to call it. But overall, we get messages all the time that say thank you. So I'd much rather take that. And we've also had people throughout different breweries and in our brewery call us up and say, hey, thank you. I called the number and it helped me. And I don't know if they were at the point to take their life or if they were at the point where they were just going through a crisis or they had a friend that they needed information about. But making that awareness out there is the main goal.
Russ, how did you all at Lakefront come to learn about this initiative, and then what was the conversation like to create this beer?
Here we have a committee called the Ripple Effect for our brewery. We try to do things, either donations through the brewery or activities, or with our crawlers like we have with Putin that we do. But we just finished up our last one, and we were thinking about what we do next, and we saw the press release that came out from Jon, and there was a couple of people in the committee that unfortunately had runs in with people having suicide, and they thought, sure, this would be a great thing to help promote, and it's one of those things that people just don't like to talk about and to have it. So you put on a beer and you're trying to promote it. It just kind of just shows that there's a lot of people out there that need this little backing that it's okay to call. These are the different issues that you have.
What's the response been, if you know?
So far it's been great. We've already gone through since Sunday like 4 half barrels of beer. People are coming in just to get it, to buy it. We've had a lot of other local press also come in and try to buy the beer or interview us about it. The response has been tremendous.
So is this I'm unclear on this. Is this a set recipe, Jon, or is it up to a brewer's discretion?
Yeah, it's up to the brewery's discretion. We the first couple of years we tried to get the other breweries to brew a specific style, and recipe doesn't matter, but just a style. And then we realized, well, that's a difficulty. Many breweries have schedules and have timelines. So instead, we put the title and we've done it for a few years now, is rename, relabel, or recreate. And that recreate really is up to them. The relabel would be, kind of a beer that you're already putting out, and the rename is either something that maybe you had coming as a seasonal or that you had in the tanks and you didn't quite. A lot of breweries kind of shoot from the hip with their names. So we were just hoping that one of those three would be available for this title, and title it as you wish, as long as there's that message is there.
That strikes me as a really smart approach, right? We've seen a lot of beers for a cause in the last few years, where a brewery will create a recipe and then offer it up to other folks, and then obviously some of the ingredients companies get involved as well, and that's nice to taste different iterations of the same beer from different breweries, but really focusing on the message and not necessarily the beer.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
just sort of thinking this, like it has the potential for a greater impact in my mind.
yeah, I mean, we have a recipe on the we have a recipe available. There might even be two this year. I haven't looked at the recipe page because that's honestly the least important part of this to me.
Yeah.
But and we have labels, we have art, we have other breweries that have done art. We're going to load those in this year. As long as they're good with it. We obviously don't want to offend an artist by taking their work if they're not okay. But it's more about giving resources to these people so that they can give resources to the greater community.
Russ, you mentioned that the response as well. You've been at this for a long time in the brewing industry. That's my polite way of calling you old. I'm wondering how you've seen the conversation evolve around mental health and around these serious issues in the beer space.
Yeah, well, usually mental health and suicide's not something a lot of people talk about. A lot of people want to, try to do promotions or something when there's a natural disaster
Yeah.
or something that goes on where you brew a beer and everything. I know we learned with the Putin crawler that it was nice to have any beer that goes in there, but you promote it by just like the label. And like you were saying, you have the message on the label. And that to me was a more powerful tool than, let's go drink this specific beer. Because that's something that most anybody then can come in and taste or look at or help support. Even though there may not be a fan of that style or something like that, if you brew something specific. But anyway, yeah, with this beer, we got the press release from Jon. We only had a couple of weeks to go, and we just were coming out with a Weiss beer. And so
Yeah.
then somebody at the table during the committee meeting said, "Well, we'll just call it. How about Save a Weiss?" And everybody loved it. And we said, "Yeah, we're coming out with this beer. We're just testing a new batch of beer, and then we'll call it that and have it out there." And it seemed to work very well.
Yeah. And just being able to have, I mean, one, your group that is pushing these initiatives forward, but then being willing to do it, right? I feel like there is, based on conversations that I've had in the past, there is a level of discomfort that comes with this topic. And people want to be sensitive towards other people's feelings, or they just don't want to admit that there's terrible things that happen in the world. Jon, what do you see as what do you hope is sort of the short term effect of this program, and then the longer term, aside from people staying with us?
Sure. I mean, that is the main goal. If it's one life, we've won. I mean, that's kind of the simplest point, but above and beyond that, it's our industry helping create a message that, it's okay not to be okay. And seeing where that can kind of go. I would love to, at some point have everybody in this country know that 988 exists. I mean, I still have friends who, they're good friends of mine, and they came in yesterday. Two of them happened to be at the location and like, oh, what's the 988 about? I mean, it's still not quite, it's not known. It's and having lost, I mean, and I've worked in the bar and restaurant industry since 1987. So I'm going to be able to count it. If I gave you two sets of high fives, maybe three, maybe four now. I'm not, I quit keeping track because it was so upsetting. Um, and the long-term goal is not to have to give another high five.
How have you seen the conversation evolve since 87? Are more people willing to, excuse me, to have this conversation?
Well, I mean, when I was in high school, you didn't talk about it. Nobody talked about it. If somebody, they passed away, there was no, it was taboo. It was, you just, especially I grew up in northern Michigan in a Irish Catholic German community. It was a sin, and that was terrible, a terrible way to approach it. And as I got older, and it happened to me with some of my core friends and people that I've worked with in the bar, restaurant, brewery industry, artists that I used to work with, and every time we'd talk about it briefly, and then we'd pack it away, and it just created, anytime that we brought up an event, a past, or a concert or something, we just kind of packed it away. And in the last 10 years, I feel like now we can talk about it, approach it. I still don't think we're there yet, but hopefully, someday we can actually truly try to, assist each and every one. And the only way I know how to in a mass is through what I do.
This is for either or both of you. So awareness campaigns like this are critical, are important in the beer space, within the four walls of a brewery. What have you each been thinking about as far as staff support, or outreach, or finding ways to create spaces where these conversations are not awkward? And is there any advice that you'd have for other folks in the beer space that might not have gotten to that point yet?
We have a couple different things. We don't have a committee. We have QR codes in the employee restroom, at the employee board. You literally can scan it and you can ask for help. And whether that be help with something that is, I'll call it like a payroll issue or whatever, but generally it's geared at mental health, and it's geared at bad behaviors too within our organization. Kind of like when you're at a ball game and text 977 for somebody that's being terrible in your area. We kind of have that for both ways. Somebody that we think might need some assistance, or somebody that has an issue or a problem. That's kind of where we started. We're very open. Myself and my business partner are in our operations on the floor constantly. We have roughly 650 employees. Today I'll be at 2 locations. Yesterday I was at 3. I work nights, I work weekends sometimes. It just kind of depends. But I will get people that will come directly and talk to me. I want us to have when I say open door, I really mean it. Like, I may not know your name very well, but if you have any issue, please come to me, or come to whoever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I would say for us, we're just at the infancy of that. Jon's got, I think, way ahead of us, but definitely since we've come out with this, we need, I'm seeing a need for this, a need to have these different spaces or different people you can talk to for the different employees. From the comments that we've gotten from everybody, it's clear that we need to have some sort of a program, or at least a place where people can go and talk with this, and so, and it make it, as Jon said, it's not taboo anymore. And Jon had a good point. To save one life, and it's well worth it. It's the best thing you've almost ever done.
Jon, how can brewers that might be listening to the show, how can they get involved in this?
Oh, sorry. If you want more information, you can go to our website. Just all you have to do is type O.H.S.O Brewery 988, and it should take you right to that link. But honestly, get involved in any way you can. We have 2 months a year. We have Mental Health Month, and then we have Suicide Prevention Month. But unfortunately, I'm transitioning right now into a new brewery, but we plan to make this a year-round beer. I want the conversation to always be present. And I know that's not viable for a lot of the breweries, but, once a year this year, I think I sent out, 3,500 messages on Instagram because I found that was the easiest way to get in touch with somebody. And hopefully next year I can do 8,000. They only allow me so many per day before they tell me I can't do anymore. And I almost got our accounts suspended a few times, but I'm willing to do that. If I can get somebody on board that may save a life, I'm all for not having Instagram for a week, a month, or whatever it might be. I hope that, we have a lot of messages. We get asked for a lot of donations. We get asked to do a lot of these natural disaster beers, as Russ stated. And my goal is not to have this be a fundraiser necessarily. It's great if you can, but not all breweries can. It's more just, once again, if somebody's sitting across that bar and is having a really bad year and they're in a bad place and they ask that question, that could alter their life. And that's where I hope that the other breweries will realize that it's that easy. Put it on for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, whatever it might be that suits you. And hopefully you'll start a conversation that ultimately is that one person. One person's at minimum. Hopefully it's hundreds of people, thousands of people that we affect, because it's not getting any better.
Yeah. And it's getting past that stigma of, having the conversation, or not having the conversation. And, like I said, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, and understandably so. But these conversations are critical.
Yeah. On the site also, we have testimonials from people, whether, their situations or whatever. I'm a survivor. A lot of our friends didn't survive, and I really don't know what I would have done without that. Sorry, without that one person that got me back on board. That had the conversation with me that it's okay. It's okay not to be good. And I really, really don't want another person that I know to disappear.
I'm so grateful that you created this initiative and that it's resonating the way that it is. It's from the darkness is light, and that reminder over and over again that it's okay to not be okay, I think is something folks need to be reminded of all the time.
It took me, I don't know. I really just opened up about this. I've been doing this beer for years, and this year was the first time I told anybody, because the space I was in, I had tried to OD, and I was in a really bad space. I was losing a marriage, which I did lose. She's still a great friend, but I had a couple of homes that were underwater. I was living in the Caribbean thinking I was going to be, in this bright, shiny space forever. And it wasn't the space that I needed. It was somebody to talk to. It was something to reach out to. And it just didn't exist at that time for me. And this year was the first time I was able to, I even felt comfortable telling people that. I just struggled with it mentally. Yeah, I'm doing this beer because of my friends, but really, selfishly, I'm also doing this beer because of me.
I'm glad you're doing it. And I'm sure everybody who's listening, along with myself and Russ, appreciates the candor on this, because it, folks aren't alone ever. So, thank you for sharing your story on that.
I'd like to thank Jon for that too. That's a very powerful message. There's just so many people out there that have only need to be helped or told they can be helped. And like I say, it's okay to say that and to come out. And it's just so happy that you've been able to take this step. It's very, very courageous of you to do this, what you've done. You're definitely a leader in the brewing industry by doing what you've done.
Agreed. I hope more breweries step up like yours has, Russ, to put these beers out and to have this conversation with folks. Thank you both for being here and for having this conversation and sharing about this initiative. This is, like I've said a couple of times now, never an easy conversation to have, but a necessary one. And hearing from both of you, on this and the impact that this initiative can have, I hope the industry and the consumers take it seriously and embrace it in the way that they're supposed to.
And everybody stop by Lakefront Brewery and get one of those beers. Thank you, Russ.
Yeah, no, thank you for having us on, and thank you, Jon, for everything you've done, and thank you for your leadership on this topic.
If you're having thoughts of suicide or need to help someone in crisis, call or text 988 to reach the Lifeline. Additionally, in the United States, you can visit speakingofsuicide.com/resources for a list of services. Individual countries also have their own resources. It's okay to not be okay, and you are not alone. You can get in touch with me by emailing Jon Holl, it's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com. A reminder, go visit allaboutbeer.com, where you can check out the podcast page, the merch page, and read great new content, as well as the archives going back to 1979. Follow All About Beer on social media at All About Beer. And if you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, you can email us at info@allaboutbeer.com or go to patreon.com/allaboutbeer. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm Jon Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.